Hi, welcome to Post-Quest Waffles. Seriously though, just finished up the Mighty Falls, and I'm quite hungry, or the Mighty Fall, quite hungry, so I'm literally making waffles, like just started, and figured I'd go ahead and do my review of the quest while I'm waffling. So, let's get into it. The Mighty Fall is probably one of my favorite quests to come out recently. Specifically because it's a continuation to the Cave Goblin storyline in such a way that actually felt like the series needed a continuation. I remember Mod John A mentioning after Bandos's death in the Bird and the Beast world event that he would like to... gonna randomly wander off camera here, get some water for my waffles. But John A mentioned that he actually wanted to do a real finale for the Cave Goblin series. And then he got assigned to do the Elf Quest finale. So I personally was thinking, oh, hey, Cave Goblin series, you know, he'll get to it once he's done with Plague's End. However, it seems that's not the case. Instead, Timbo and Deg did a fantastic job taking a series that was already really over with the Chosen Commander and giving it, you know, a tail end. It really wrapped up all the plot lines about, you know, who the Chosen Commander was, the aftermath of Bandos's death with all of these different Bandosian races, and only really one kind of supporting us, and then the trolls too, but they're weird. And it really felt cohesive. I really enjoyed this quest. The combat was a little strong for a master quest, but even then, I was okay with it. So, getting water in waffles. Okay, so, as I was saying, the quest just did a lot of really good things for me. It hit a lot of good notes. First and foremost, as I mentioned, the use of Zanuck, as well as the use of Dorgish Khan. I admit I'm a little disappointed that none of the other Cave Goblins got a graphical update, considering how different Zanuck looked from the rest of them. I'm not quite sure I like the update to Zanuck, to be honest. And that's partially because of the high res into low res polygon count. The Jagex keeps doing with new content. Ashdale was a huge offender of this in terms of the Pathfinder gear and the items they gave you from that quest, as well as some of the monsters. Agaroth looks really, really weird. As well as the new cows, simply because everything looks really blurry. And it almost looks like they're emulating Ocarina of Time in terms of the graphical style, and Zanuck looks like this too. Luckily, nothing else in the quest really looks like that, so I'm not really sure why they chose to do that with Zanuck. But yeah, they did. Waffle maker. But graphically, the quest was quite good, just aside from a few odd missteps in terms of overall design. Where's the cinnamon? But that's just graphics, and I think overall they did a pretty good job graphically. But when we talk gameplay, story, that's where the quest shined. This quest its story was magnificent. It wasn't, you know, huge scale, but it gave us just a lot of information, especially post-quest with the Bandosian book, his memories. We got a lot of really good information about his origins without kind of giving away everything. We actually have not learned his race name, which surprised me a little bit, because we got the name of 3 of the tribes that live on his home planet, which he destroyed, coincidentally. That was all his fault. We also learned the name of the god that he initially killed to become a god, which was also very interesting. This god was almost Gothixian in the way he worked. He was asleep, but was able to tell what was going on with the world and actually spoke to Bandos in his mind while Bandos was trying to kill this god. So it was different. But story-wise, yeah, as I was saying, I feel like the idea that the Bandosians were looking for somebody to blame and decided to blame the cave goblins was really good. It led for a very interesting conflict. I love the idea of just having all of the generals just chilling out in the Lumbridge swamp caves, trying to figure out how to get to Dorgish Khan. But it also just made a lot of sense because Zanuck kind of was at fault for Bandos' death in terms of weakness. Now, I blame it on the Bandosian players, but you know what I mean. In the Bird and the Beast itself, it really wasn't a failing of Bandos or Armadil. It really just was players sided with Armadil. And that's how it goes. Furthermore, the revelation that Guthix, in fact, or rather Guthix's intervention, did not, in fact, bring Zanuck back, but it was, in fact, the intervention of Bandos was a very interesting development, because gods don't normally have the ability to bring back their followers from the dead. But in this case, he was her chosen commander, and he gave up a chunk of his power to bring her back, only for her to then defeat him shortly after. It's a very interesting plot choice, and it says a lot to Bandos' loyalties and desire for these conflicts to happen anyway, as if he was testing Zanuck for this final moment here. But I'm talking a lot about the backstory here, so let's get back into the plot of this quest. So, all of these Bandosians join up, and they go and fight and kill all of the cave goblins, especially Zanuck. So you go and manage to distract them into holding the Kaizag tournament, which was an ancient tournament which Grorodor has fought in numerous times that was kind of a decider of many things. So in this case, it was to decide who the new leader of the Bandosians would be. Now, of course, it can't be you. You're a puny human. But the cave goblins and Zanuck, who's already the special commander, could well be selected. However, it's brutal. It's a fight to the death. So, another thing I really loved about this quest was the humor. For such a serious quest in terms of tone and overall scope, there were a lot of really legitimately funny moments. It also really tied together pretty much everything that would result from the death of Bandos together into one really stellar, compact story. For example, it, in passing, of course, mentioned the Bandosian warbands, which I appreciated a lot. And it even brought those guys together as if, they were trying to assassinate all these other Bandosians here and be like, look, we humans, we deserve to be part of Bandos' army. I'm not Bandosian, but still, the way that part of the story was carried out felt very well executed. I thought it was hilarious that they decided they were going to use goblin transmogrification potions to get themselves into Ubusk, and all the dialogue with all the different goblins was just hilarious. I really, really enjoyed that as well. Another thing that I enjoyed humor-wise was Yelps and the goblins themselves. I did not think I was going to enjoy seeing Yelps in a quest, and instead, he showed up and he was funny. Not only was just the way they played him really ironic, as if, he was, he is an idiot, and they treated him as such. And I enjoyed seeing that, with the writers being Dag and Timpo really going all out to make fun of that fact. Getting that Yelps' cash bag with all he has left is, that's about 70-something K, and getting that useless spin ticket was really funny afterwards from his chest. I also liked the idea that he'd been accidentally stealing from Treasure Hunter the entire time, and that explains why so many of the rewards are shared. Alright, now I get to wait for that. Another thing that I really enjoyed about Yelps and the comedy was it really took the absurdity of a lot of the Bandosian tribes and races and, played it up in a really interesting and entertaining way. Let's see. Further story. I really enjoyed getting to see a lot of these past characters again. It was good to have Grubfoot back. It was good to have my arm, chilling out and supporting us, as well as Burnt Meat. And it was also very interesting to interact with a lot of these characters. It was interesting to see org naming conventions as well. So there's Grordor, and apparently all org names end with DOR. So it was, it was just like there for you to pick up, and I thought that was very interesting. And just this was really a massive, a real finale for the Cave Goblin series. As much as the Chosen Commander was, this took all of these characters that we knew, and we loved or hated, and brought them together again in one massive clash. A tournament, a brutal tournament to end it all. I admit it would have been really entertaining to be able to see a lot of the other fights that weren't just yours, because obviously they were happening while you were not in the arena. There was only one arena for you to fight on. So I would have loved to see, Grar versus Bork. I would have liked to see what Mono the Cyclops could have done. I was very curious about that because we have very limited Cyclops content. Just, mentions in player imports as well as the ones we can fight in the Warriors Guild. So I was very curious, what they do in terms of additional combat aside from just smacking you with a stick. The fights themselves were really interesting too. Yelps's was very different. It was comedy in and of itself. He summons these random bodyguards, and it was funny just how uneven the fight was technically. Like, oh, in this fight, you can bring in any goblin reinforcements you have. I don't have any goblin reinforcements. That's too bad. Get in the arena. That was great. And it was also very interesting that you had to both fight the bodyguards and avoid Yelps just sitting there spinning for the win constantly. Demacia! And I also really liked the way that wherever the coins dropped, telegraphed where Yelps was going to be, so you were able to move around, fight the bodyguards, and then get onto Yelps himself. I also liked the choice. I personally killed Yelps because I don't like Yelps. I think he deserved to die. He was a terrible character for a terrible minigame that never should have existed in the first place. But I'm not getting into my opinion on microtransactions in the game. So, another thing that was very nice about Yelps' combat was just he dealt damage. Like, he was strong enough to actually be a threat. It did a lot about moving around, having your character just move in different ways to, keep yourself safe. And that was really a theme of all three of these. One done. It was a theme of all three of these boss fights. So the wall fight as well, I liked the use of Lol, actually. I kind of expected him to be very much a joke character. But he was actually quite tragic. And they kept him as Morningstar's brother from the original Berthorpe tutorial. And just after you finish fighting him, I chose to spare him. And he just simply says, "Why do you choose to let me live after you killed my brother Morningstar?" And that actually hit me a little hard. I'm like, they really played him as more of a serious character that was trying to live up to the honor of his brother who died in the war for Berthorpe and Taverley, I guess. His mechanics were very interesting as well. Normal ranged attacks, and then he throws down giant stones that you have to dodge, and then he can explode the stones, or you can destroy them first. I personally didn't destroy any of the stones. I simply moved in a small circle around, him, and then when the stones were exploded, I just moved to the other side, which I felt mitigated a lot of damage for me. Ooh, crap, I'll have to clean that up. But he was a very interesting fight. Another one of those movement-based, and it feels. I noticed this was talked about in the forums actually, and something I was reading that they very purposely made the fights so that they would be possible, but very difficult in the upcoming Legacy content or combat. So that was interesting choice. Another thing I noticed and rather liked about all of the combat was they did unblockable damage. And even while you could pray, all of the mechanics for the different fights were very interesting, because it wasn't just about, you know, oh, you're going to go in and you're going to beat the snot out of this guy. No, for the wall fight, you couldn't use armor, which is something I haven't seen done in a while, and I quite liked it. It made you feel a lot squishier and gave just that unfair advantage to lull that you had to be cautious of. And then the Garrotor fight. This is the one I had some issues with. I actually died twice on this one, as well as disconnected once due to my own crappy connection. But the Garrotor fight dealt a little too much damage, in my opinion. An unblockable 3500 hit when it can be chained with 2 other 3500 hits is a little too large. But once I got the mechanics of the fight down and I really understood what was going on, it felt very doable. This is probably the hardest boss in a Master Quest, in my opinion. Even the Dagonoth Queen V2 is not quite that hard. But I felt like it was executed in such a way that once you understood the mechanics and you realized the previous 2 fights were really preparing you for this one, it felt like a really great culmination of a boss fight. Furthermore, just the choices with Zanuck. It was weird, actually. I'm surprised to read that players have actually killed Zanuck, because we formed such a connection to her in the previous Cave Goblin quests. I personally did not kill her. I also really found the revelation that Zanuck was dying, as Bandos had died, very different. It really gave this sense of urgency to the quest, even though, you know, she wasn't going to die in 10 minutes. It still created just that very different feel. I also really liked the way that no matter what our choices were, we gained the respect of the Bandosians regardless. Even if they don't like us for the choices we made, it was still important in such a way that, you know, they understood why we made the choices we did. I personally let Zanuck live. She's the chosen commander, and now that she's on Ubiusk, maybe her life will extend for a little longer. I'm actually curious if the mods remembered to remove Wandering Zanuck after the quest, regardless of your choices. But I also found it a little sad that they actually let players kill Zanuck again, as she is the chosen commander, regardless of what all the other Bandosians like. She was selected by Bandos as the chosen commander. Why are we murdering her in the quest? Especially because she's already on her way to dying. It felt like just a very odd design choice. I mean, I understand that quests are very much about player choice now, and I really appreciate that, because player choice is huge to me. Look at this beauty. But I think the choice of killing Zanuck was a very, very odd choice. I can understand where it came from. It ends, you know, the feud, but she is the chosen commander, and I really think the Bandosians should have been showing her at least a little more respect, even if they were mad about her, mad at her for Bandos' death, regardless of who the blame really goes to. Backstory-wise, I know I touched on this at the start a little bit, but reading through Bandos' memories after collecting his memories at the Kazaiga Arena on Ubiusk was just fascinating. We don't actually learn Bandos' race name, but we learn that he lived on a very brutal world where wars were ever occurring. The strongest was the one that led. He actually kills his father in the story because his father had been wounded in a clash with another tribe and had become weak. And so it very much just was, he's a very brutal guy. He actually came across as very unlikable in the story. And I'm okay with that, because Bandos is intended to be just that brutal, big high war god, you know? So in the story, you know, as a child, he crushed his toys. He always played these war scenarios. He then takes over his tribe and leads just heavily aggressive offensives against other tribes. He's willing to sacrifice his own units to take out larger numbers of others. He had his own tribe rushing forward and battling. Excuse the typing, I'm getting some specifics down at the same time. and he sent war machines just to crush his own tribes, so that it would kill a large number of this warring tribe, which is specifically the one that injured and largely killed his father. His tribe is called the Kalikra, while the enemies are the Gozor, which is the ones that he specifically fights. And then there is also, what are they called? There was a third tribe that was mentioned, but the god that he kills is called Jododu Otaku, which is very interesting too. Memory 5 in particular interests me a lot. It says, Bandos sits on an overturned cart as the leader of the nomads is thrown at his feet. He's old, appallingly so, and he looks up at Bandos with white glazed eyes set in a cratered face. Bandos prods him with a copper boot. Where is your god? Even with his face in the dust, the nomad's voice is firm. He is your god as well, young conqueror. What business do you have with him? I know our stories. More specifically, I know the story of how Jododu Otaku became a god. You cannot mean, the nomad pales. No, even for you that is unthinkable. Bandos brings his face closer. Tell me where he sleeps. It's very, very odd. For some reason, the Hada Idar is the third and final tribe that I know is mentioned here. But this story is very interesting for Bandos because it beats around the bush as to how did this god become a god and why is it such a large controversy here? It's treated as such, as if it's some big secret, as if Bandos shouldn't know this thing. But what it is and why it's so important, I didn't seem to see it as revealed. I also really did like that it showed how Bandos' eye was gouged out even before he became a god. It's also very interesting that Jododu Otaku is basically the life force of the world. It's almost like he is the world's anima, which I don't really know what that means in the end. It's a different representation of what a god is for once. And I'm not sure how to feel about that or really what to expect from that kind of revelation. But Bandos, knowing that Jododu Otaku's death will destroy the world that he lives in, sparing only himself, he willingly kills this ancient, half-sleeping, I guess, god, and purposely becomes the last of his race. I found that to be just a very odd choice as such a warlord, that he wouldn't make such an attempt to save more members of his race, especially considering he's a conqueror, he's a warlord, but he has his own tribe that he needs to lead. What motives does he have to watch them all die? However, he does travel to Gielinor, he travels to Ubiusk, and he gains in the end. He gathers his huge armies of Ubiusk. He marches on Gielinor, and he's finally kicked out by Guthix, and it was very entertaining to see Guthix, show Bandos up, like this tiny, frail little guy. And Bandos tries to attack him, and Guthix is just like, yeah, get out. I enjoyed that piece of the story quite a bit. It was also very interesting to see how Bandos was basically peering through the void back into the world, and that's how his prophet was really able to initially see him, was that they could see through Guthix's barrier in a different way. Let's see. As wrap up, honestly, I would give this quest, if I were to give it a numerical rating, arbitrary of course, I would give it a 9 out of 10. I thought the story was very strong, and it wrapped up a series that had already been wrapped up in such a way that it felt like this was really the logical conclusion, which impressed me a lot. It was a very serious quest with some excellent humor mixed in there to really lighten the mood. The fights were interesting, varied, and were difficult enough to provide a challenge and provide some deaths that I was impressed, but they weren't so frustrating that I just wanted to quit. There weren't really any puzzles aside from just figuring out which goblins were human and which ones were not, but even though that was a very interesting puzzle, it was very much about determining, how well do you know the goblins, and do you care if you kill goblins? It was both a personality quiz as well as a discovery quiz, and I thought that was enjoyable as well. I also felt the quest did a fantastic job of touching on every single one of the races and followers of Bandos in all one big way to wrap things up, and that really, really impressed me. An excellent quest overall, probably one of the better quests that's been released in the last year and a half, ranking up there with Missing Presumed Death and other just generally good content. I really, really enjoyed my time spent with this quest. I enjoyed exploring the little bit of Ubius we actually got to encounter, and I generally just enjoyed the choices that were made in this quest's design. Mods Dag and Mods Timbo, and I believe Mod Doctor was involved as well. And everybody was involved. I know the Duke's team worked extensively with them to complete this quest. Everybody just did fantastic, fantastic work overall. And the quest, it really shined. It felt like the people that worked on this really knew the lore of the story they were working with and made a huge attempt to honor that. And I both appreciate and enjoyed that very much. So, my waffles are done. I'm going to go get some syrup. I'm going to sit down and eat these. I hope this review was insightful and interesting to you. I know I look a little disheveled. It's actually 1:30 in the afternoon, but I don't have anything to do, so I just down here in my PJs, or whatever you want to call it, and wanted to get some breakfast together. And I just finished the quest, so I figured, let's review while making waffles. Fun way to get stuff done. So, again, I really hope, this was interesting, insightful, and or enjoyable to you. I hope, you enjoyed the quest as well. And please, I'd love to hear what you thought about the quest in the comments, as well as the style I reviewed this in, because this is very spontaneous. Literally, I have no notes in front of me. I'm just sitting here rambling for 27 minutes. That's kind of impressive for me. So, yeah. The Mighty Fall. That's that. I'm a Mascot. I hope you enjoyed this review, and I may consider doing some more of these in the future for content and requests. So please, if you enjoyed this, maybe subscribe if you'd like. I know I have a lot of just varied content on my channel. It's mostly Minecraft stuff. And I don't really record gameplay. My computer isn't particularly great. But just, if you enjoyed this and you'd like to see more of this, let me know. I'll continue to do more of these if this is enjoyed. And I'll be sure to upload it to this YouTube channel. So yeah, I guess, share it if you'd like. Really just anything to let me know that you enjoyed this and would like to see more of this. And I'll call that an end. The Mighty Fall, Runescape, Mascot, signing off.